The night was silent, but the silence was not peaceful. The air smelled of burned metal and broken machines. The battlefield stretched for miles, covered with wreckage of giant ships and weapons that had fallen from the sky. Among this destruction, one small human moved carefully, his boots crunching against broken steel and ash. His name was Daniel, just an ordinary explorer who had been caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But tonight, fate had something strange waiting for him. As Daniel climbed over a piece of shattered armor, he heard a sound. At first, it was faint, like the low groan of something massive in pain. He froze. The sound was not from the machines nor from the wind. It was alive. Slowly, he followed the noise, his heart beating faster with every step. He did not know what he would find, friend or enemy, danger or miracle. Then he saw it, lying. Between the ruins was a figure so massive that Daniel's mind struggled to accept it. A warrior, at least 100 feet tall, was pinned under broken machinery. Her skin glowed faintly silver under the moonlight, and strange markings ran across her arms like rivers of fire. She looked both alien and majestic, like a living mountain that had fallen to the ground. Her chest rose and fell slowly, each breath like the sound of thunder. Daniel's legs shook. He had seen aliens before, but never something like this. This was not just another being. This was a warrior of legends, a giant who could crush starships with her hands. And now she was helpless. For a long moment, Daniel just stood there. His instincts screamed at him to run. Who knew what this alien would do if she woke? But another thought burned in his mind. She was alive, and she was suffering. He could not walk away. Gathering his courage, he stepped closer. The warrior's eyes were closed, her face twisted in pain. Pieces of sharp metal pressed into her side, and sparks still flickered from the machine that had trapped her. Daniel swallowed hard, then whispered, though he knew she could not hear him. "Don't worry, I'll try." The task was impossible. The broken machinery weighed more than 1,000 humans. But Daniel was not thinking about logic anymore. He climbed onto the wreck, his hands searching for any weak points. He pulled, pushed, kicked. Nothing moved. Sweat rolled down his face. His arms burned with effort. But then he noticed something. One piece of the wreckage was lodged loosely, held by only a bent beam. If he could remove that, maybe the rest would shift. With renewed strength, Daniel braced himself and pulled with everything he had. The metal screamed, sparks flying as it resisted. His muscles screamed louder, but he did not stop. Finally, the beam snapped free. The wreckage shifted with a heavy crash, moving just enough to release pressure from the warrior's chest. For a second, Daniel thought nothing had changed. Then he heard it. The warrior gasped, her massive lungs filling with more air. Her eyelids flickered, then opened slowly. Daniel's heart stopped. Her eyes were not like human eyes. They glowed with a faint golden light, filled with confusion, pain, and something ancient, like she carried the weight of 1,000 battles. Her gaze locked on him, the tiny figure standing on the wreck. The ground trembled as her lips parted. Her voice was deep and powerful, yet weak from her wounds. "Human?" Daniel froze. She had spoken his language, or something close enough. He stepped back, almost stumbling, but forced himself to stay. "Yes, I'm human," he said, his voice shaking. The warrior blinked slowly, her massive hand twitching as if she wanted to move but couldn't. "Why? Help me." Daniel's throat was dry, but his answer came from somewhere deep within him. "Because you needed help, that's all." For a moment, there was only silence. The alien's golden eyes studied him carefully, as if she could not believe what he said. Then her breathing slowed, and her eyelids grew heavy again. She slipped back into unconsciousness, but not before whispering a word Daniel did not understand. Daniel stood there, his chest rising and falling fast. He could not believe what he had just done. He had saved her. At least, he had given her a chance to live. But what now? She was too big to move, too heavy to carry. And if others came looking for her, enemies or allies, What would they do when they saw him here? The night grew darker, and Daniel knew he could not stay. But as he turned to leave, the warrior's hand moved slightly, her fingers brushing against the ground near him. It was not an attack. It was almost a reach, as if, even in her sleep, she was holding onto the tiny figure who had chosen to save her. Daniel looked at her massive form one last time. He did not know why he felt so connected to her already. Perhaps it was the way she had looked at him or the strange words she had whispered. Whatever it was, he knew his life had just changed forever, and somewhere in the distance beyond the ruined battlefield, shadows moved. Others were coming. The night was far from over. The battlefield was quiet, but Daniel's mind was not. He sat on a broken piece of metal, watching the giant warrior sleep. Her breathing was slow but steady now. The golden light in her eyes was gone, hidden behind her eyelids, yet the memory of that gaze stayed with him. Daniel had expected to feel proud after saving her. Instead, he felt small, smaller than ever before. How could someone like him matter to a being so powerful, so huge, so far beyond anything human? He shook his head and whispered to himself, "What have I done?" The ground suddenly trembled. Daniel jumped to his feet, thinking enemies had arrived. But the sound was not from outside. It was from her. The alien warrior's chest rose sharply and her hand twitched again. Her massive body shifted, pieces of wreckage rolling off her armor. With a deep groan, she began to wake. Daniel froze. His heart pounded in his chest like a war drum. He wanted to run, but his legs refused to move. He watched as her golden eyes opened once more, brighter than before, burning like twin suns. This time she did not look weak. She looked awake. Her gaze locked on him again, and Daniel felt like the world stopped. For a long time she said nothing. Then her deep voice rumbled through the air, soft but heavy. "You are still here." Daniel nodded quickly. I couldn't just leave you." The warrior tilted her head, confused. Her silver hair, tangled and covered in dust, fell across her massive shoulders. "Human," she said, tasting the word carefully. "Small, fragile, yet you pulled me from death." Daniel swallowed hard. "I only did what anyone should do." Her golden eyes narrowed. "No, not anyone. Not here. Not now." She slowly raised one arm. The movement was heavy, as though the air itself resisted her. When her hand came down, it landed with a soft crash on the ground near him. Her fingers were larger than his entire body, claws sharp enough to split stone. Daniel stiffened, ready to run, but she did not strike. Instead, she opened her palm, exposing it to him. It was an invitation, or maybe a test. Daniel hesitated. His mind screamed, "Don't do it. She could crush you in a second." But something in her eyes stopped him. Against all reason, he stepped forward and placed his small human hand against her giant palm. Her skin was warm, almost burning, and it pulsed faintly like living energy. The warrior's expression changed. Surprise, wonder, then something deeper, something he did not understand. She spoke a single word in her own language. It echoed through the ruins like thunder. Daniel did not know what it meant, but he felt its weight, its power. Then, in broken human words, she translated. "Mate." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. What? "No, you don't understand. But she cut him off. "In my people's law, one who saves life is bound. Life for life. Soul for soul. You are my mate now." Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came out. His mind spun in circles. He was just an explorer, just a human who stumbled into this war zone. And now this giant alien warrior, this goddess of battle, was declaring him her mate. Before he could speak, the sound of engines roared in the distance. Daniel turned, eyes wide. Across the dark horizon, lights appeared, dozens of them, moving fast. Ships. The warrior's eyes narrowed. She struggled to rise, her massive body shaking. "They come," she growled. "Enemies. They smell weakness." Daniel panicked. "We have to hide. They'll kill us both if they see you like this." But the warrior shook her head. "I do not hide, not with mate beside me." She pushed herself higher, her huge frame rising from the wreckage. Daniel stared in awe. Even injured, even barely able to stand, she towered above the battlefield like a living mountain. Her golden eyes burned brighter, filled with fury and pride. The enemy ships drew closer, their lights cutting across the night sky. Daniel's hands trembled. He had no weapon, no plan, nothing but his will. Yet as he looked up at her, something inside him shifted. For the first time, he did not feel small. He felt chosen. The warrior turned to him. "Stay close, human. Tonight they learn the price of touching my mate." The ground shook again as her massive foot stepped forward. Sparks lit the sky as the first enemy ship fired. The battlefield was no longer quiet. War was coming again. And Daniel, ordinary, fragile Daniel, was standing at the heart of it, bound forever to a warrior who could change the fate of galaxies. The night sky burned with light as enemy ships circled overhead. Their weapons glowed, preparing to strike. Daniel stood frozen, his heart pounding so hard he thought it would burst. He had no gun, no armor, nothing. Yet he stood beside the warrior, his so-called mate, while death rained from the sky. The giant warrior, still weak from her wounds, lifted her massive arm. Her golden eyes glared at the incoming ships with fury. "They dare," she growled, her voice shaking the ground itself. "They dare touch what is mine." Daniel looked up at her in shock. "I'm not—" He stopped himself. What was the point? She had already declared it. Her people's law, her culture, her belief. He was bound to her now. "Mate." The ships opened fire. Blazing bolts of plasma streaked across the battlefield. Daniel dove behind twisted wreckage as explosions shook the ground. But the warrior did not hide. She stepped forward, her massive hand catching one of the burning projectiles. It exploded against her armor, sending sparks across her body, but she did not fall. Her roar cut through the night like thunder. She reached down, grabbed a broken piece of alien cannon from the wreckage, and hurled it into the sky. The makeshift weapon smashed through one of the enemy ships, ripping it in half. Flames scattered across the stars. Daniel's eyes widened. Even injured, she was terrifying. A living storm. Yet, she still looked down at him between attacks as if making sure he was safe. The enemy regrouped. More blasts rained down, shaking the battlefield. Daniel coughed through the smoke, trying to think. She was strong, but she couldn't keep this up forever. She was wounded, bleeding, barely able to stand. They needed a plan. He shouted over the chaos. "There's a fuel core under the wreckage. If we trigger it, it'll explode, big enough to scare them off." The warrior's golden eyes turned to him. For a moment she hesitated. Then she nodded. "Mate has fire in mind. We use it." Daniel's chest tightened at her words. Mate. She didn't question him. She trusted him. Together, they moved. Daniel scrambled across broken machines, searching for the glowing core he had spotted earlier. His hand shook as he worked to expose it. Behind him, the warrior shielded him with her body, her massive frame taking the brunt of the enemy fire. Each blast rocked her, but she did not fall. Finally, Daniel found it, the unstable energy core. Sparks crackled around it. He shouted, "Now!" The warrior reached down, her enormous hand closing around the glowing device like it was nothing more than a pebble. She raised it high, then hurled it into the sky with all her strength. The core ignited, exploding with a roar that lit up the heavens. Fire spread across the battlefield, and the enemy ships scattered in panic, retreating into the distance. Silence returned. Smoke drifted through the air. Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. He had survived. Somehow, against all odds, they had both survived. The warrior lowered herself to the ground, her massive form sitting heavily among the ruins. Her armor was cracked, her skin bleeding silver light, but her golden eyes still burned bright. She turned her gaze on Daniel. "You are small," she said softly, "but inside, bigger than stars." Daniel shook his head, trying to catch his breath. "I'm just human. I'm nothing special." But the warrior leaned closer, her face like a mountain before him. "No. You are mate. You gave life back to me. You stood when others would run. My people, they cannot ignore this. They will know, they will see." Daniel frowned. "See what?" Her lips curved into something that might have been a smile, or perhaps a warning. "That the strongest warrior in the galaxy chose a human, and that choice changes everything." The weight of her words crushed Daniel's thoughts. He wasn't just a rescuer anymore. He wasn't just a survivor. By saving her, he had stepped into something far greater. A bond, a law, a vow he never asked for but could not break. In the distance, faint lights glimmered again. But these were not enemy ships. These were larger, grander, an entire fleet, painted in silver and gold, descending toward the battlefield. The warrior's eyes narrowed as she watched them approach. "My people," she said. Daniel's stomach twisted. If her enemies had reacted with violence, what would her own people do when they saw him? Tiny, fragile, and standing where no human should stand. The warrior placed her massive hand on the ground beside him. Her claws dug into the soil, but her palm remained open, an offering of protection. Her golden eyes never left him as she spoke words that shook him to the core. "They will not take you. You are mine." And as the fleet descended, Daniel realized the battle was only beginning. The silver and gold fleet descended like a wall of light across the night sky. Massive warships broke through the clouds, their engines rumbling like thunder. Daniel shielded, his eyes from the glow, his heart racing. He had fought enemies only minutes ago, but this felt far more terrifying. These were not strangers. These were her people. The giant warrior, still sitting among the ruins, straightened her back and lifted, her head high. Though wounded, her presence carried power. Her golden eyes burned with pride as she looked at the ships. "My kin," she whispered, though her voice shook the battlefield. Daniel's throat tightened. "What will they do when they see me?" Her eyes flicked down to him, then back to the sky. "They will question, they will mock, some will want your death." She leaned closer, her voice low and firm. "But they will not touch you, you are mine." The words should have comforted him, but instead they filled Daniel with dread. He wasn't ready to face an entire alien empire. Yet he had no choice. The fleet was already landing. The ground shook as enormous ships touched down on the battlefield. From their ramps poured soldiers, giants like her, armored in silver and marked with glowing lines of power. They marched in formation, their eyes fixed on the warrior and the tiny human standing at her side. Whispers spread among them like fire. "A human? So small. Why is he here? What does this mean?" Finally, one figure stepped forward. Taller than the rest, clad in armor brighter than steel, this one's presence demanded silence. His voice was sharp as a blade. "Warrior Lesera," he said, addressing her by name. "You live. We thought you lost." Daniel looked up at her in surprise. Lesera. At last he knew her name. Lesera's golden eyes glowed fiercely. "I live," she said, "and I live because of him." Her hand moved slightly, pointing toward Daniel. Gasps echoed through the alien ranks. Some soldiers stepped back in disbelief, others laughed bitterly. The armored leader's expression hardened. "You claim this creature saved you?" Lesera nodded once. "Yes. By our law, life for life. He is my mate." The whispers exploded into shouts. "Impossible. A disgrace. A human cannot be mate to a warrior of the stars." Daniel felt his knees weaken. The weight of their hatred pressed against him like a storm. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but his voice died in his throat. The leader stepped closer, towering over Daniel like a mountain. His eyes burned with contempt. "This cannot stand. Our people will never accept a fragile insect as one of us. Warrior Lysera, you shame yourself." Lysera rose to her feet. Even injured, she towered above all of them. Her voice thundered. "I do not shame myself. I honor the law. Without him, I would be ash among the ruins. He gave me life that cannot be denied." The leader sneered. "Then let it be tested. If this human is truly your mate, let him prove his worth before all. If he fails, the bond is broken, and so is he." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Wait, what?" Lysera's golden eyes turned to him, burning with anger. Not at him, but at her people. "This is wrong. He should not be forced." But the soldiers roared in agreement with their leader. "Test him! Test him!" Their voices echoed like thunder, demanding blood. Daniel shook his head. "I can't fight them. I'm just me." His voice cracked with fear. Lysera bent low, her massive face close to his. Her eyes softened for the first time. "Listen to me. You are not just human. You are mine. That makes you stronger than they will ever know." Daniel's breath caught in his chest. For a moment he saw no battlefield, no army, no death. Only her eyes, filled with something fierce and unshakable. She believed in him. The leader raised his hand. "Then it is decided. At dawn the human will face the trial. If he lives, he is mate. If he dies, he is nothing." The soldiers roared again, stamping their feet in thunderous rhythm. The ground shook beneath Daniel's boots. He wanted to run, to scream, to beg them to stop. But when he looked up at Lysera, he saw no fear in her eyes. Only pride. Only fire. That night, as the alien army camped around them, Daniel sat alone among the ruins, his thoughts racing. A trial. A test. Against beings who were stronger, faster, and far more deadly than him. How could he survive? Lysera lowered herself. Beside him, her massive form casting a shadow that swallowed him whole. "Do you regret saving me, human?" she asked softly. Daniel shook his head. "No. But I don't know if I can do this." Her hand moved, palm open once more, resting beside him like an anchor. "You already did. You faced death to save me. You stood when others would fall. The trial is nothing compared to what you have already done." Daniel looked at her hand, then at her golden eyes. Slowly, he placed his tiny human hand against her warm skin. "Then I'll try," he whispered. Lysera's lips curved into a fierce smile. "Good, because tomorrow, the galaxy will see that. My choice was not a mistake." Above them, the stars burned brighter than ever, and Daniel knew that when dawn came, the trial would decide not just his fate, but the fate of humanity's place in the galaxy. The first light of dawn spread across the battlefield, painting the broken metal and smoke in shades of fire and gold. The alien army gathered in a massive circle, their chants echoing like drums. In the center stood Daniel, small and fragile, compared to the giants around him. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat louder than the soldiers' roars. Lysera stood behind him, towering and proud despite her wounds. Her golden eyes never left him. Her voice boomed across the camp. "By our law he stands. By our law he faces the trial. None may touch him until the end." The leader, clad in shining armor, stepped forward, holding a massive weapon shaped like a spear of fire. His voice cut through the air. "The trial is simple. Survive. Prove you are more than dust. Prove you are worthy of a warrior's bond." Daniel swallowed hard. Survive. That was all? It sounded easy, but as the leader raised his hand, gates opened around the arena. From the shadows crawled beasts, monstrous creatures bred for war. Their jaws glowed with fire, their claws sharper than blades. 4 of them, each larger than a tank, circled Daniel like predators tasting fear. The crowd roared with excitement. Let him be crushed. Let the human break. Daniel's hands shook, but he forced himself to stand tall. He had no weapon, No armor, nothing but his mind. He whispered to himself, "Think. Don't fight them like a warrior. Fight them like a human." The first beast lunged. Daniel dove aside, rolling across the dirt as its claws ripped into the ground. Dust filled his lungs, but he kept moving. He spotted broken scraps of alien steel on the battlefield. Grabbing a sharp piece, he swung it as the beast charged again. The shard slashed across its eye, making it roar in pain. The crowd gasped. Another beast came from behind. Daniel ran, his legs burning, heart screaming for escape. The monster was faster, but Daniel ducked under a wrecked engine. The beast slammed into the metal, trapping its head for a moment. The soldiers shouted in shock. From above, Lizera watched, her fists clenched, her voice trembling. "Yes, use your mind, mate. Show them." The third beast charged. Daniel's body ached. His lungs begged for air, but his eyes caught something, the cracked ground near a fuel line. He sprinted, baiting the beast. At the last second, he rolled away. The creature's massive weight struck the weak spot. Flames erupted, engulfing it in fire. The alien crowd fell silent. 3 down. 1 remained. The last beast was the largest, its glowing jaws snapping with fury. Daniel's body shook with exhaustion. He had nothing left, no tricks, no strength. The creature charged, faster than his tired legs could carry him. But then, her voice thundered across the arena. "Daniel!" He looked up. Lizera's golden eyes burned with fire. "Remember why you fight. Not for them. Not for law. For me. For us." Something inside him snapped into place. His fear melted into fire. His weakness turned to steel. He stood tall, even as the beast thundered toward him. At the last moment, Daniel leapt aside and drove the steel shard deep into its neck. The beast howled, staggering, before collapsing with a ground-shaking crash. Silence. The entire army stood, frozen, staring at the human who had done the impossible. A small, fragile creature had survived what many giants could not. Daniel stood in the center, chest heaving, body broken but spirit burning. He raised his hand in defiance. "I am human. I am not strong like you. I am not tall like you. But I will not break." The crowd erupted, not in laughter, not in mockery, but in shock. Some cheered, some bowed their heads, others simply stared. The leader stepped forward, fury in his eyes, but even he could not deny what had happened. "The trial is survived," he said bitterly. "By law, the bond stands." Lizera roared with pride, stepping into the arena. She knelt down, her massive hand lowering to Daniel. He climbed onto her palm and she lifted him high, her golden eyes blazing. "He is mine," she declared to the galaxy. "He is mate. He is warrior." The soldiers lowered their heads, forced to accept. For the first time in history, a human stood as equal among giants. As the sun rose higher, Daniel looked at Lizera. Exhausted, trembling, but alive, he whispered, "I only survived because of you." Her voice was soft, only for him. "No, you survived because you are you. That is why I chose you." Together they stood before the galaxy, giant and human, warrior and mate. And in that moment, Daniel knew a terrifying truth. If one human could shake an empire, what would happen when the galaxy faced all of humanity? The future would never be the same again.